Welcome to Distribution Talk with Jason Bader, the show where we dive into the stories, struggles, and solutions from business owners and thought leaders in the wholesale distribution market. Hey friends, Jason here. In this episode, I had the opportunity to catch up with my friend Colin Dees. Now, Colin and I both work in the distribution consulting space and on similar areas, but he really gets into a couple nitty-gritty areas, and I'll let him go into that in the episode. But it was such a pleasure chatting with him, and I recently met him face to face, and we both realized that we have an absolute passion for teaching. And we grew up in distribution, grew up in the warehouses, and all the operational side of these businesses, and then all of a sudden said, you know what? I like to teach. And we both have that in common. So it was a great conversation. Always enjoy getting his perspectives. I hope you enjoy our conversation. This episode was brought to you by my friends at Profit2. I invited their founder, Dave Roller, on the show to talk about their pricing philosophy and maybe spill the secret sauce. Over the course of my interview with Dave, I found that his methods were much in alignment with the manual digging process I've shared with clients over the years. His algorithms just did it a whole lot faster and easier than I could. It also helps that he comes from a distribution background and understands the needs of the wholesale distributor. Since Profit2 is a software as a service, and the operative word being service, they're uniquely positioned to provide real horsepower to your internal team. Come take a look at what Profit2 can do for you at www.profit2.com. That's profit with a number 2. And be sure to let them know you heard about them on the Distribution Talk podcast. Well, hey, Colin, welcome to Distribution Talk, my friend. I really appreciate you taking the time to be with me today.
Of course, Jason, thank you. And it's an honor to be on the number 1 distribution podcast.
Yeah, then in $1.25 will get you a cup of coffee, man. So, no, it's kind of funny when that thing came out. I'm like, really? All right. Did not know, but, I'm humbled to say the least. So anyway, if you wouldn't mind, just share a little bit of your background, man. I just, kind of, how'd you get involved with distribution? Why do you stay in distribution? So yeah, take it from the top, anywhere you want to start.
Yeah, that sounds great. I do sometimes feel like I was raised in distribution. I say that from time to time. I was a service technician as a kid, starting when I was like 15 years old. I was an HVAC technician with 2 different service companies.
Okay.
And so a lot of times I was in and around distributors constantly every day. We're going in and out of distributors, and I built a lot of relationships with the distributors that I was buying from. And I built a lot of really strong friendships. Even from those really early days, I'm still really good friends with some of the distributors that worked there at the time. And they might have just been on the warehouse or on the counter or that branch manager. But yeah, that's really where it started, is just building those really strong relationships with the distributor.
Okay.
I got a 2-year technical degree in HVAC. And I think that's why it just kind of kept me interested in distribution and heating and air conditioning at the time. But I realized that I wanted to continue to go to school, and I felt like there was a distributor in my town that had tuition reimbursement. And so I worked in the warehouse, like a lot of us in distribution do.
Absolutely.
Worked in the warehouse and worked on the counter, and then I was branch manager, and then eventually promoted into the corporate office, and ended up being an executive in 2 of the largest distributors in North America.
That's amazing. And I think I'm glad you brought that up, Colin, because I think there are those opportunities, for that tuition reimbursement, that educational reimbursement. And I don't think people take enough advantage of that. I mean, this is something that I really would love to see more of. And I think sometimes they gloss over or forget, the associates forget that that's available to them. And no, I'm really glad that you brought that up.
It's funny too. And at the time, I didn't have much. I didn't have much. And so I was extremely incentivized by that. But then also, I'm working in the warehouse and on the counter, and I walk into the showroom one day, and there's a Hardy scholarship on the counter. And it's in our company newsletter, and I'm flipping through it, and I'm like, oh man, I'm going to try that, and I filled it out and I
Yeah.
got really excited. And at the time, I really didn't have enough money to get started in school. And so filling it out, sending it in, and I got it. I was like, I couldn't believe it. I was
That's
so excited.
awesome. Oh, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but, I look back on that moment and yeah, how important not only that scholarship was, but also having the tuition reimbursement from my company. There's a lot more to go when it comes to my education, but that is really where it got started.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Colin. No, that's really cool. And yes, you got into some very lofty positions with big, big distribution organizations.
I did, and a lot of those large distributions were heavily involved in mergers and acquisitions.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I say, well, yeah, I had my primary roles that I was in, but it wasn't until later that I looked back and realized, wow, I did a lot of acquisitions during those 20 or 25 years. I mean, maybe 20, 25 mergers, acquisitions, and just constantly working in that space. It wasn't until later when I really realized that not only had I appreciated working for those large distributors, but wow, what an awesome experience working in M&A as well.
Oh, for sure. That's the thing about, any acquisition, man, you see the good, bad, and the ugly. I mean, you just get to see all kinds of interesting stuff that pops out. And, and I don't want to belittle, I don't want to belittle companies that, you run into, but every once in a while you're like, I cannot believe you all made money for this long. I mean, and it's like, wow, holy smokes.
It can be. It can be a lot of chaos, and
Sure. Oh, yeah.
and you get to see this from a lot of different distributors now, especially in my current role, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But
Yeah. Yeah.
being able to see different companies and how each one of them does it a little bit differently, that's where a lot of those learning lessons have come from me. Like just, they're all doing great, but there are certain ones that do things certain ways, and you can learn from some of the mistakes and also some of the awesome things that they did as well.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, yeah. And I think that's the greatest thing about coming on this side of the fence is that you do get this amazing education. It's this continual learning path. Yeah, I'm amazed every day, when I work with people. And, even just in Zoom based meetings, where I have a few people that maybe I'm facilitating a group, the things that they share with me is just astounding. I mean, it's like, wow, okay, I didn't really know that. And that's really amazing. And I'm going to share that with anybody I can. So,
It is. I'm so thankful to have been able to see that from so many different distributors since I've been doing my consultancy over the last 7 years. There has, to your point, there has been so much education, wrapped around that. Just being able to meet different people, awesome people in this industry, down to earth people, and a lot of them are more likely to share a lot of their experiences with me. And I really appreciated that too.
so let's transition into that, into the consulting side. When you left active work in the distribution, or when basically you didn't have a job anymore, that's what lots of people. Yeah, what is it? It's like those who cannot do teach, and I get that every once in a while from people. I'm like, yeah, well, I like teaching, and I think you do too. So please, if you wouldn't mind sharing that a little bit.
It was, a little bit of chaos, right? So approached by an owner of a startup company in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And Colin, I want you to come, interested in my experience, especially
Mm-hmm.
in just M&A and some of those kinds of things. But I want you to come be the general manager of my startup company. And I got really excited about it. It was something that was going to be a little bit outside of my industry, but a lot of international, a lot of traveling to Asia and things like that. And it was just something very different for me. And at the time, it was really refreshing and really helped me, I think, to grow my career professionally.
Mm-hmm.
But I learned a lot about being in that startup world in that moment and just seeing the intense growth, just the intensity of being in a company like that. I learned so much in such a short amount of time. They say it's kind of like dog years, like, 1 year in a startup environment might be like 5 or 7 in a normal type of business.
For sure.
So it was accelerated learning for me, and I learned a lot. And I really appreciated it. That company sold,
Mm-hmm.
and so then I was, what am I going to do?
Right. Right.
To your point, I started calling some friends,
Sure.
and I've got a lot to share. I got a lot that I can help with,
Yeah.
and that worked out well for me.
So, Colin, let's go back, if I could, to your education. Did you complete your schooling while you were still active in distribution, or did you kind of wait a little bit longer? Because I know, I mean, you got a PhD, man. You're a highly educated dude. So, tell me a little
Yeah.
bit about.
It is. I told you doing my undergraduate degree, I was working in the warehouse and on the counter
Yeah,
while
yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
finishing it, while I was working on it. So I would work all day in the warehouse and on the counter, eat my lunch like a lot of us did and shove it underneath the counter when the customer comes in.
Sure. Yeah,
And,
yeah,
I would work all
yeah.
day on the counter. And then as soon as work was over, I went to school at night. And we'll talk, I'm sure, a little bit more about my education, but one of the things that's important to me is that and it is different for different people, but I did the entirety, every minute of my education was at night.
Mm, interesting. Interesting. Okay.
So and as I got promoted into the corporate office, I realized that I had this desire to learn, and I
Yeah.
felt comfortable. I felt engaged. I felt challenged when I'm in the academic world. And if I was ever found myself outside of it, I was trying to figure out a way to get back in it. Like I want to stay in school to some degree. And a lot of times I talk to, especially younger people, and I say, you don't have to go to college. And I wanted to always make that clear. It's like college is not for everybody. But what is for everybody is learning and educating themselves and finding,
Great point, Colin. Yeah.
whatever
Great
works
point.
for them. And
Yeah.
so, I go back to my 2-year technical degree in HVAC. I'm a service technician at heart. I was born and bred that way. And that was a great learning experience. And, especially nowadays, anything you can do as far as the trade goes, learn, educate yourself, find a mentor, and
Hmm.
today you can Google whatever that means for you. But,
Yeah.
be in a learning environment. And I'm a big proponent of that.
Sure. So, all right. So you did this whole thing at night. I mean,
I did. I did. Matter of fact, as I got into the corporate office and I continued to receive the tuition reimbursement for my master's degree.
there you
So,
go.
my
All right.
undergraduate degree, University of South Alabama in Mobile, Alabama, my master's degree from Jacksonville University in Jacksonville, Florida. And so I was always staying as close as I could to that. I'm trying to find a way to get back in. I want a certificate. I want to do something to just help Colin grow. And there's a lifetime of that for me. But, it wasn't till after I started my consultancy did I start the PhD program.
Okay. Okay.
What I realized was is that the PhD program was going to be a full-time job.
Yeah.
It was going to be a full-time engagement. So starting my consultancy, especially early on, it worked out well that I had the flexibility to do that because I was also employed by Clemson University, which is where I got my PhD from. So I was teaching in the construction science management school, which is where I got my PhD. It was the closest thing to a trade. I wanted something that was close to a trade, but I wanted a high level of education. But
Yeah.
I never want to separate myself from the trades, because I love the trades. I
Right.
love the
Right.
people that are in the trades, and I found a happy place there. And so I got to teach a lot of the undergraduate and graduate students that were in the construction science management field at Clemson, HVAC and
Yeah.
plumbing and
There
plumbing.
you go, man. Right on. Well, Colin, when did you figure out that you're a teacher at heart?
Yeah, I think probably, well, I'll start by telling you where it probably came from.
Okay.
My mom was a teacher. My
Okay.
dad was a teacher. My sister was a teacher. My aunt was a teacher. My uncle was a teacher. It is 100%.
I was going to say you
It
got
is,
born into it, man. This is,
it
yeah.
is totally in the bloodline,
Sure.
Jason. No doubt about it,
Sure.
man. And that's probably where it probably started, but I didn't
Yeah.
realize so much until, especially working for a large distributor. We're constantly doing quarterly, regional meetings. We're doing lots of annual sales meetings, and I just would land in these presentation roles. Like, okay, Colin's going to come talk to you about supply chain management, or he's going to come talk to you
Right.
about,
Right.
pricing and profitability, and just different things, warehouse management, things
Yeah.
like that, right? That I've been responsible for over the last several years. So I would find myself giving these presentations to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And what would happen was somebody would come up to me and say, "Man, that was awesome. That was really good. I really appreciated that. And to the point where I was like, I would come home and I would say, man, that was really well. Like, I was kind of surprised somebody liked it. And then later on, even in my career, even my employees that work directly for Colin, they would tell you right now, Colin is always in front of this whiteboard. He's always drawing. And what am I trying to do? I'm trying to educate people, just like I've always been. I just want to teach somebody. I want to help somebody grow their career, or, I feel like they'll be better, or they'll look back on it. Maybe that's some of Colin's legacy, that they remember that, and they do.
This episode of Distribution Talk is sponsored by InSQL Distribution Software. InSQL is a fully functional distribution-based software package, and these folks do it very well at a price point many smaller distributors can afford. Another thing I like about this company is they do it all in-house. They take on these applications and build them into the platform using state-of-the-art Microsoft technology. No third-party bolt-ons for them. This is important because when you need technical assistance, they are the single point of contact. If you're ready to step up to a fully loaded, scalable distribution package at an affordable price, look no further than InSQL Distribution Software at www.insql.com. That's INXSQL.com. It's so interesting, Colin. I mean, your life there parallels mine pretty close. When I left, my family business and started into the consulting side, that was the epiphany moment where I realized I'm a teacher. And that's now been for the last 23 years. That has been the driving force, is I am a teacher. I like it when I'm able to share something that can make somebody's life a little bit better, a little bit easier, whatever it may be. So
yeah, when I first started doing, especially public speaking, I would get a little bit nervous sometimes, and a lot of times I would just, I would tell myself, like, they are here to learn something from you.
Yes,
this is what you do. You're supposed to be teaching and educating. That's what you do best. And I would find a lot of motivation and inspiration in that. And that's exactly the way I go into every one of my public speaking engagements that I've done. And I know you and I have done some, side by side a lot over the last
waving at each other across the hallway, buddy. Yeah,
that's exactly right. And so that's really what I want to be known for. I want to be known for somebody that helped, that educated, helped train, and help grow somebody professionally or, personally. So that's where all that comes from, and I'm currently teaching operations management at Appalachian State University in Boone, North Carolina, which is an absolutely beautiful campus, and so just honored to have the opportunity to be able to teach at the collegiate level.
Totally. No, I think it's fantastic, Colin. I think it's just when you shared that with me, was it 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago? I don't know. Whenever we were, again, waving at each other across the hallway in Phoenix. But yeah, it's, I'll tell you, teaching is just one of those things that I absolutely enjoy. I love teaching. It's fascinating. I did never think that this would be my career. I never thought I was going to go down this path. And lo and behold, that I do. And I'll tell you, getting up in front of audiences, 23 years later, I still get a little nervous every time, but I think that's healthy, because if I feel like, and this is just kind of my take on it, is that if you're not a little bit nervous to get up in front of them, then you're coasting, then you're coasting on this presentation. If you're a little nervous, that means you want to do your very best for them. And so,
100%.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I'll work myself so much up leading up to the speaking engagement at a industry association or something like that.
Yeah.
As soon as I get finished, it's like, okay, everybody leave me alone. I'm just going to crawl underneath my little rock,
100%. Oh yeah. You need that. Hey, we talked about that, with our other cohorts, Tracy and Mike, and, Tracy's like, nope, I need downtime. I'm going to go chill in the hotel room. I gave it. And so, yeah, that's really funny you say that. So, hey, I want to transition on to, you mentioned, you talk about pricing and then, profitability, supply chain optimizations, those types of things. And if we could, I'd like to really drill down on, what you're doing right now and how you're helping people right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I do. I have kind of two pillars of places that I play, and then there's some other ancillary things that I do. But the two primary places I play in are supply chain management warehouse management, all things supply chain, but then also customer pricing and profitability, which has been something that's just been really, really popular lately.
Yeah.
And I've just a ton of interest, and I know me and you've talked a lot about it too. And,
Yep.
I'd love to dive into that a little bit deeper today.
Please, let's do that. Yeah. Tell me your philosophy. I mean, pricing is very personal. I think it is an emotional and personal side of, distribution. Now, we'd like to try to bring a little logic to it, but there's a lot of emotion associated with that endeavor.
It is, and I think that in my career, I found myself more on the scientific side of things, but I'm always, I'm an artist too. So I like to think that, there's always a good balance between science and art, and some of these roles that I've played in the past are somewhat heavily focused on data, large amounts of data, lots of calculations and formulas and things like that. So, I like that side of it, but I don't forget that there's a lot of artistic side to it as well. To your point, it can be customer pricing, very sensitive.
Yes.
It can be very, very sensitive. And so I think that's why being responsible for this for so many years is why I've kind of come up with something that's unique, that's worked for me and worked really well, that I can share with other distributors going forward. So it's worked out really, really well. And it's really not about raising prices. That can really get people a little bit shaky or scared, or because it's so sensitive. Like, don't change the price. But what I like to do is really focus on what I call the architecture or the structure of the customer pricing that a distributor has in place. And I actually, on my screen over here, I have my pricing funnel, if you will. But I use this as an analogy because I was looking for something to try to describe why this is so important for me and why this is really working well for distributors. And it was that a marketing funnel, if you think about the top of the marketing funnel.
Yes.
So essentially what you're doing is you're marketing to a lot of customers, a lot of products at one time. And that's really important. As you come down the funnel, I use this analogy too. It was like, okay, I created one flyer for one customer, for one product, and then I walked it all the way over there to them and I hand delivered it to them. Well, that's bottom of funnel marketing, right? And that's really expensive.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So in my point, it takes a lot of more labor to do those. So that funnel, if you think about customer pricing in the same way as that marketing funnel, it's very, very similar. Because you can have a price, you can lock in a price between this one particular customer and this one particular product. I call that customer specific pricing. That's bottom of funnel type of pricing, just like the marketing funnel. And if you do too much of that over years, that can be really chaotic. And so what I do is I try to help distributors not just get the pricing right, but get it in a good structure, in a good architecture so that you can get your arms around it and you can maintain it. So you can price more stuff in the top of that funnel so you can get your arms around it. Because a lot of the things that I see is that a lot of time a distributor may only have one person that's responsible for customer pricing.
Right.
It may not even be a full person, Jason.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It could be like, you know what, we're going to let the purchasing people, why don't you dabble over here in that? For sure.
That's right. That's exactly right. So, but what happens is that person might have, inherited some of this from someone else. And then that person may have inherited it from somebody else. And I can't tell you how many times there's been 20 years worth of that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I hate it when you find, some sort of price that got locked in or captured. And all of a sudden there's been 3 price increases since then. And oh boy, you're either underwater or you're like, just barely breaking even on it. And that can happen absolutely in this architecture.
It is 100%. So what I try to help distributors do is really understand how their structure is set up currently. That's usually one of the things that I really try to do early on is say, here's your customer pricing and here's where it lands inside the funnel, right? How much of it is in the bottom of that funnel? How much of it is in the top of that funnel and anywhere in between? And a lot of times we find lots of opportunities that way because that's really trying to do the right thing by get the right pricing in the right format and unravel some of that maybe that's been in there for a really, really long time. And a lot of times that can help improve profitability can improve margins just by trying to get in there and get the margin right. I'll give you one more story.
Yeah, please.
I had a distributor that called me and said, Colin, my margin is slipping and it's slipping faster than I expected it. I just want you to come in and just kind of give me an assessment and tell me what you think. Well, what I found, Jason, was a lot of that bottom of funnel type of pricing. But not only that, locked in hard coded pricing.
Yes.
Like you mentioned, right?
Yeah.
Well, that was right during or right after COVID. So you can imagine if you've got a lot of that hard coded pricing in there, it might not have been throwing up a red flag, but as we went through those 18,000 price increases or cost increases in such a short amount of time, it started really showing up. So that was a huge project because essentially what we were trying to do is get them back to where they were before all of that started happening. And there was a lot of analysis that went into it. But the takeaway from that was, okay, we're going to move some of that pricing, the right pricing, more toward the top of that funnel and let it move with cost as well. Let's remove some of that really hard-coded pricing that was really dragging their margin down. But we did a lot of that by really focusing on the structure and the architecture of their pricing.
So speaking of that, it seems to me that a lot of these pricing problems you run into are because people really don't understand how the pricing logic works, or let's say a pricing matrix or any of that inside their ERP. And I know you've told me that you've spent a lot of time really understanding these distribution prevalent ERPs. I mean, there's, let's just say, maybe a dozen of them max. I think I might be a little generous there, but, you've spent a lot of time really trying to understand that, because I think you're right. I mean, I truly believe that is an area, where somebody will discover that they've had a locked in price and they didn't really know how they did it or when they did it or what happened. And so, please.
Yeah, it is. That's been kind of something I think that's made Colin unique, is that, growing up in the grassroots environment, I've rang up more orders than I can care to even count,
sure. Yeah.
So I appreciate being savvy with your ERP system, understanding some of those, the parameters and how to navigate through your ERP system. So one of the things that I've tried to build in my consultancy is understanding these different ERP systems, especially in the pillars in the functional areas that I work in.
Right.
That has been really important to me to understand, whether it be Eclipse or DDI or Infor or Profit 21 or Plex or in Kinetic, you name it. I'm trying to get as much as I can so that I can help a distributor, because I don't want to just be on the top. I want to actually get in there and help them understand how that pricing matrix works. They call it a matrix for a reason. I mean, it's not any Keanu Reeves thing, but it can be pretty complex from time to time.
It is complex. Absolutely. 100%.
But being able to just meet them in that place, meet them there, and be able to really jump in and help them understand how it's set up. Some of the best price checking and things like that happens is, I think, very helpful for them understanding their structure and their architecture.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I've always, for the last, again, since I jumped out and really got into this over 20 years ago, I found that was a major barrier, is that people did not go under the hood. They did not invest in, how does this thing actually work? And I think that's, a tremendous failure. You make this massive technology investment, but you don't get a return on your investment because you won't go under the hood. That is, I see that in a lot of different modules and in different aspects of those ERPs. But that's a big one.
Yeah. And a lot of times what I'm doing is I'm building the tools in there so they can monitor this themselves. No matter what ERP system we're going to be working in, we're going to build them and hand them those tools so they can have them. They own those tools even well after Colin's gone, so that they can go in there. And here's the thing, that they can measure and monitor customer pricing in other ways other than just GP.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm really encouraging people to monitor and measure based on the different type of pricing that exist. Is it customer specific pricing? Is it down in the bottom? Is it in the middle somewhere using a contract or a customer group? Or is it a contract and price product specific? Or is it customer group, product group, more toward the top of the funnel? and then monitoring GP, obviously, but just understanding and monitoring where that pricing structure is, I think it can be a real differentiator.
So, Colin, I'm going to throw you a little curveball. I was thinking about this earlier, and I was like, going in and doing some work and working with a distributor on their pricing structure going forward. And I've done some of this work myself about just going in, kind of basic tips and tricks and getting it under the covers a little bit. How much of a margin improvement can we see? Let's stick in like HVAC and some of the construction related distribution, because that's kind of where you and I play a lot. So
it is.
Give me an idea. And I know I'm not going to hold you to this, but about what do you think?
I'm usually going to target 2 to 4%. And I'm telling you that I give that range because it really depends on where they are in their journey.
Yes.
A lot of times it can really lean hard toward that 4%, especially if it's like I was telling you, man, it's been maybe 20 years. It could be multiple people that have just inherited a lot of this history of setting these matrices a lot of times, and they haven't expired.
Right.
And they're just in there and they're just living. And a lot of times we don't really see that far down in the data. It's hard to get there. So depending on where they are in their journey, I usually say 2 to 4%. But a lot of times I'm going into it thinking, there's a good chance
there's a nickel
you could
more.
be on.
Yeah, there's a couple more.
Yeah. And that makes it fun.
Well, it does. And if you think about the impact on the bottom line to those companies, if you were able to find just 2%, let's just go with your low range. Holy smokes.
Yeah.
I mean, they're paying for 5 Collins. They're paying, paying for all kinds of, buying a new ERP. But I'm saying that, you can really see there is a tremendous financial impact when you can actually go and help them clean this mess up, if you will.
It is 100%. And that's what makes it worth it. That's what makes it exciting. If you can't get excited about a bunch of data and a bunch of price matrices and, that scientific side of the business, then let the profitability inspire you, because, man, there's a lot of it there and it can be really rewarding. It can be really challenging, but, you can really make an impact on a distributor like no other functional area of the business. And you can do it pretty quickly too.
I know. Isn't that crazy? You can, within 12 months, you can see a pretty significant impact.
Absolutely. And a lot of times, as soon as we get started, we're watching for those movements immediately. We're going to go find low-hanging fruit and we're going to see progress very, very quickly. And then we're going to keep building on that as we go.
So I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about some of these pricing services that, that work with distributors out there, because I truly believe that you can do the roll up your sleeves kind of work that you're talking about, the DIY work. But tell me about the impact of some of these companies that come in and use, little algorithms. They've got a little crystal ball or black magic.
It is. And, I think it depends on where the distributor is in that journey.
Yeah.
And what I find them a lot of times is in not maybe ready for that. And a lot of times I might lead them down that path and say, okay, once you've got to a point where you're seeing that kind of like level off a little bit and you've done a lot of work inside that architecture and structure, because you're going to want to continue to, don't let it go. Let it be a journey. It's not a destination, it should never stop. And
that's a great point. Yeah.
So there is really, I think, a place where you can DIY and make a ton of progress and really increase your profitability. And then at some point, maybe that is right for the distributor. And I've got some guys that I've worked with, and there's some wonderful ones out there. And I've recommended lots of them in the past. So I really think it just depends on their journey and where they are.
That's a fair answer. And I agree. There's a lot of DIY you can do. I mean, there's just a couple of quickies, that you can do it, and it all of a sudden you start making impact. But I love this subject. I think it's really fascinating because it is kind of a mystery sometimes to people until you demystify it, until you, and I like your analogy of the funnel. I mean, you start talking about that and, you're a whiteboard guy, so, things, absolutely. You're going to write them down. And I think that's how people can see the same vision that you have. And then combined with your technical expertise in these ERPs, I think you've got a really killer combination there. Colin, it's just been a pleasure, man, catching up with you. And I know you've got so many other things you'd love to share, but maybe that's for a next show down the line sometime. So
That sounds great, Jason. I am
yeah.
just honored to be here with you today, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, first, before I let you go, man, tell people how do they find you? I mean, obviously, I'm going to put them in the show notes and all that kind of stuff, but let's hear it from the horse's mouth. How do they go find Colin?
Yeah, please. My website is dees-consulting.com. So feel free to jump in. There's some chat in there, some places you can book a meeting or just send me a message or anything like that. It's all over the website. So that's pretty easy. Find me on LinkedIn, obviously, or just, send me an email at colindees61@gmail.com.
Perfect, man. As I said, we'll put all that stuff in the show notes so people can find you. But I'm thrilled to talk with you. I'm so glad that we kind of connected there in Phoenix and finally got to meet each other face to face. So and I look forward to seeing you here. I think it's next month, about a month. We're going to be both teaching at UID.
Yeah. I think this is my fifth or sixth year in a row. I love UID. Because it's a learning environment.
Totally.
It's backed by university, it's backed by curriculum, and I just love that environment. And that's exactly the way I'm going to go screaming into that thing is who can I teach something to?
Who can I impact?
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
All right, my man. Again, thank you so much for taking the time to be with me today.
You're welcome. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, consider sharing with your friends and colleagues. And don't forget to follow the show on your favorite podcast application. Links to sponsors, products, and services mentioned during this episode can be found in the show description area or at www.distributiontalk.com. Distribution Talk is edited and mixed by the brilliant team at the Creative Impostor Studios. This episode was brought to you by my company, the Distribution Team. We are a consulting services firm dedicated to helping wholesale distribution clients remove barriers to profitability, generate wealth, and achieve personal goals. To learn more about how we can help your company succeed, check us out at www.thedistributionteam.com.